Welcome to Episode 6 of Project 250, a weekly chronicle of the people, places, and events of the American Revolution, in the order they occurred. So, without further ado, here's what was happening 250 years ago this week, February 5th to 11th, 1775. Last week, as you recall, John Adams continued his rebuttal of Massachusettensis, delivering a strong defense of Whig principles in the process. In Massachusetts, military preparations continued with the appointment of two new general officers, John Thomas and William Heath, as well as the establishment of a commissary department. Additionally, efforts were made to recruit the Stockbridge Indians for colonial service. Massachusetts adopted its own Articles of War and sent delegates to other New England colonies, urging them to forward troops to Massachusetts without delay. On February 2nd, at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, the arrival of a cargo ship sparked a confrontation between local Whigs enforcing the Continental embargo on British goods, and British officials attempting to surreptitiously unload the ship's cargo of coal and dry goods. After a standoff lasting several days, and despite the intervention of British officials and even the arrival of the HMS Kingfisher, the unloading was eventually blocked and the cargo ship allowed to depart, presumably for the island of Jamaica. As we begin this week, in a London newspaper, the unofficial diplomat, Benjamin Franklin, who was soon to return to America, published an imaginary speech defending the courage of American men and rebutting recent comments by a British officer to members of Parliament, that Britain had nothing to fear from the colonists, since the Americans were unequal to the people of Britain in devotion to women and in courage, and worse than all, they are religious. In his reply, Franklin argued that American men were actually more effectually devoted to the fair sex than their British counterparts since the colony's population had increased in recent years while Britain's population had declined. Regarding American courage, Franklin cited the example of the French and Indian War, during which, in Franklin's view, the colonial militia had repeatedly bailed the British regulars out of one sticky situation after another, due to repeated British blunders. On the topic of religion, Franklin reminded his readers that it was zealous Puritans who had rid Britain of the much-despised King Charles I. In attempting to understand the anti-Protestant tone of the officer's comments, Franklin surmised that his counterpart must be a Stuart sympathizer, in other words, a supporter of Catholicism, which likely explained his disdain for American Protestants and their embrace of not only the Protestant religion, but Protestants' love of liberty and spirit. This week also saw the final chapter of the Sandy Hook affair. On Wednesday, February 8th, between 12 o'clock and 1 p.m., a group of citizens from Elizabethtown, New Jersey, seized an oyster boat owned by a resident of Staten Island. This individual was targeted solely because some Staten Island residents were alleged to have been ready to assist in unloading some goods from Captain Watson's ship, the James. In this instance, the boat was dragged ashore and its cargo of oysters distributed to local vagabonds. Leading the mob was Jonathan Hampton, a justice of the peace, county court judge, and chairman of the Committee of Observation. Hampton was an active member of the Patriot movement and had previously been involved in an attempt to obstruct the transport of the Royal Regiment of Ireland. More recently, Hampton had taken part in a riot in Sussex County, during which a mob attacked a peddler and destroyed his property. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, after releasing the oysterman, the mob began to heap abuse upon local loyalists. To further intimidate the Tories, the mob erected a gallows, though it was never actually used, and then raised a liberty pole in the center of town. According to reports in the Loyalist press, Justice Hampton, as usual, had been thoroughly drunk throughout these events. Amid all this drama, two aldermen, Blanchard and Dayton, tried to stop the rioters but could only slow them down, which did little to quell the chaos. After about 2 hours of bedlam, Alderman Blanchard ordered the gallows demolished. The liberty pole would remain in place until February 13th, when it was finally dismantled. In summing up the day's events, Rivington's New York Gazetteer, a notorious Tory weekly, had this to say.
This was a glorious day to the sons of licentiousness, and it was also a glorious day to the sons of loyalty, for it has made in Elizabethtown more proselytes to the side of order and government than all the other endeavors that have been exerted to abate the fever of the times.
On February 9th in London, Parliament, in an address to King George III, declared Massachusetts to be in a state of rebellion.
We, your Majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects, in Parliament assembled, find that a part of your Majesty's subjects, in the province of Massachusetts Bay, have proceeded so far to resist the authority of the Supreme Legislature, that a rebellion at this time actually exists within the said province.
Meanwhile, even as Lord Chatham urged the king to withdraw all troops from Boston as a first step toward reconciliation, Britain was rapidly preparing for war. Lord Suffolk, responding to Chatham, condemned the conduct of the Americans, stating that the British government had tried every gentle method in their power but to no avail. Suffolk noted that things had at last come to that crisis, that either the mother country must assert her authority or resign it. As one of the king's ministers, Suffolk advocated a policy of coercion. Lord Lyttelton supported Suffolk's views, emphasizing the infallibility of Acts of Parliament, and arguing that any power that resisted them should be compelled to submit. Lords Gower, Rochford, and Weymouth further backed the government's plan to coerce the Americans into obedience. On February 11th, the London Gazette published a list of reinforcements heading to Boston, including 3 regiments of infantry, 1 of dragoons, 7 companies of marines, and a large train of artillery. According to the Gazette, orders were also issued to increase recruitment efforts, particularly in Madrid, to enlist seamen for immediate service. As the week ended, in Virginia, a man named Jonathan Watson placed an advertisement in the Virginia Gazette announcing the sale of his plantation on the Piankatank River, in eastern Virginia's Middle Peninsula. The plantation, known for its fine peach orchards, featured an exceeding good brick house, along with a kitchen, laundry, coach house, new stables, and Negro quarters. The estate encompassed about 2,000 acres of land in multiple tracts and included cattle, sheep, hogs, horses, and assorted equipment, such as plows, carts, wagons, axes, and other tools. This transaction is particularly noteworthy because Watson had purchased the plantation in 1767, soon after his arrival in Virginia, from Warner Washington, first cousin of George Washington. By 1775, Watson, an avowed loyalist, felt compelled to return to England. Whether he sold the plantation willingly or under duress remains unclear, but it bears noting that Watson eventually sold his estate for less than half its original value. And that's the way it was 250 years ago this week. If you enjoyed this video, please tell a friend. And if you like what you see on this channel, make sure to like, share and subscribe. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter, or X or whatever they're calling themselves these days. You can also find us on Substack. Thank you for watching.